Victoria Alexander. I am the owner and founder of Realty Collective, and welcome to Buying into Brooklyn. I started this boutique real estate firm 18 years ago to defy the stereotypes associated with New York City real estate. You're all very familiar with them, I am sure. The workshop was designed to outline the buying process in Brooklyn and is no way comprehensive. But New York City is different from anywhere else, and can be overwhelming, especially if you've never done this before. So we will give you a good place to start. Today, we offer this workshop freely so that you have the information at your fingertips to make educated decisions and tear down the gatekeeping information that is often used as scary sales tactics to frighten you into working with people that might not be the best fit for you or person for the job. So do not hire your uncle, do not hire your friend. You want seasoned professional and experts to be working with. That 20 years experience means something when you're at the table, when you're negotiating, you're looking at properties, when your lawyer is there going over contracts. Like, you need that experience. So Farah's going to launch a poll. She might relaunch it in the middle, depending on how many people join as we go on, to help us do our market research and get to know everyone and where they are at in the process. So first things first, you want to create your dream team. I'm going to be introducing the two people that are on my team that I've been working for a long time in a second. We have worked together on possibly 50 to 100 deals together. It's important to me to work with other strong women and with people I have long-term relationships with that I can hold accountable. And it's easier to keep deals together and people in communication and deals on track when you have long-term relationships with people, and especially when time is of the essence. And most importantly, if everybody else's, the biggest decision for buyers is on the line. You don't want someone going on vacation to derail a deal, or somebody incompetent to be derailing your purchase of this property. So I'm going to introduce the two women that I've been working with for a very long time, Rashida Sadiq and Lisa Yanchi. Rashida, would you like to introduce yourself and then pass it to Lisa?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Victoria said, my name is Rashida Sadiq. I am a real estate attorney. I have been practicing real estate for 20 years now. I represent a lot of first-time buyers, also sellers in all of New York City, and also all of the boroughs, including Long Island, Suffolk, and Nassau County. I'm also licensed in New Jersey. I represent clients in mostly northern New Jersey. So I'm here this afternoon to kind of give you an idea of what the role of your attorney is in regard to the purchasing process. I normally say I'm the last person on this dream team that normally the clients come to, but it's that's the point when it gets a lot more scarier, because that's when you're about to enter into contract. So we'll go over kind of the things that are in your contract, things you should be looking for, timeframes, and things like that. So I look forward to, giving, answering questions and explaining about the home buying process from the legal point of it. And Lisa, I've worked with her over the years on many deals. So Lisa, you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Rashida. Hey, everyone. My name is Lisa. I am a mortgage loan officer at Cross Country Mortgage. Like Victoria and Rashida said, we've worked together for a really long time. I specialize with first-time home buyers. I find it really exciting and thrilling to help someone buy their first home. I also know it's a very, very stressful time and a stressful process. This is probably the biggest purchase and the biggest debt you've ever taken on, and I'm here to sort of walk you through it. I Cross Country Mortgage, we're just like all the big banks, but all we do is mortgages. What sort of makes me a little different than the other banks is I have a wide variety of products, probably 80 or 90 products. So I can really figure out the best loan for you, which we'll talk about. My specialty is New York City, and the surrounding areas like Westchester and New Jersey and Connecticut. I'm licensed all over the country, so I do deals all over the country, but New York is really my specialty. So excited to chat and see how I can answer any questions you have. Back to you, Victoria.
Thanks, guys. So, and who am I in the deal? I am the buyer's broker. So if you guys don't know what that is, usually when you have purchased something, if you haven't, you want two parties, the person that represents the seller and the person that represents the buyer. I'm your coach. I cost nothing to the buyer. The seller pays both the brokers, the buyer's broker and the seller's broker. And this is important because it's basically like free expert advice that you need as a first-time home buyer, because you're going in with no experience. Sellers at least have gone through this at least once. That firsthand experience gives you so much information and education that helps you get through the process. You want to make sure you have experts at your side so that you don't make any missteps. And this isn't to scare you. There's just so many moving parts. You want seasoned experts. Just all I'm saying is don't go it alone and hire people that know what they're doing. So I'm a matchmaker, a therapist, your sounding board, whatever it takes to help you get you into your first home and keep you as sane as possible, because this is a wild, emotional roller coaster ride. That is the home buying process. My little job is to guide you through this process, give you advice step by step. And I've been doing this for 20 years. So I have experienced almost everything there is in the Brooklyn market. It's my job to get you into your first home and make you a homeowner and protect you from your own instincts, which often get in the way of reason and keep you from getting to the closing table. Plus, these services don't come as a cost to you, and it's because I get paid by the seller. So there's no reason not to be working with a buyer's agent. If it's me or somebody else, you want a buyer's agent at your side. And you need these three people, in my opinion, to move forward with purchasing a home: the buyer's agent, the attorney, and the mortgage professional. And it's important because you want everybody that has a fiduciary responsibility to you at the table. The seller's broker has a fiduciary responsibility to the seller. When you walk into a listing that you see off of Street Easy, the broker that is there is looking out for the best interest of the seller, and you need the same person looking out for the best interest of you. The other two people on your team, your mortgage professional, your lawyer, they're going to look out for you, but within their realm of expertise. They're not going to negotiate for you in certain aspects and get you the deal and property and win out on other bids. It's just not their job or role. So when you want to interview everybody, make sure you feel comfortable and that you can take advice from any of these people and that they answer your questions. If anybody uses scare tactics or doesn't answer the question and you understand it and feel confident moving forward, you shouldn't be working with them. Because everybody's job in here is to guide you through the process and educate you with their expertise along the way, so you can feel confident in the process enough to give away all of your huge savings that you've been putting away for most of your life. And personality is important. If you like, I'm very straightforward. Some that resonates with a lot of people. Some people it doesn't. So find the person that the personality type matches what you're looking for in an advisor. Can you listen and take advice from this person? That is on you, and you need to listen to yourself and say, this is the right person for me or not. And because this is an intimate relationship, at least for the buyer broker and buyer process, that's based on trust and transparency. So pick your advisors and also pick your advisors based on people that have relationships in the industry. Like I said twice now already in this, don't hire your friend that just got their real estate license. Don't hire your friend that, just got into the mortgage product industry. You want seasoned professionals that have relationships in the industry, specifically for real estate. I live in Red Hook. I have done a gazillion deals in Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, Park Slope, this side of Brooklyn. I know a lot of the other brokers that are working right here. So when I put in an offer for a property, they're my clients. The other brokers usually know me and they probably close transactions with me. And so they're like, oh, Victoria, she's a straight shooter. I know what this is like. And I know she can close a deal. She can hold a deal together. She's going to get us to the closing table. Those are the people that you want working for you and on your side. So why buy now? First slide. The rent's too damn high. It's only gotten higher since I started this class. You want to do your own design. You want investment, long and short term, and build equity for yourself. You are paying somebody else's mortgage. You're either paying your own or you're paying your landlord. So decide whose mortgage you want to be paying. Building equity for yourself is the best investment in yourself. Right now, the cost between renting and buying have never been closer. Even with raising interest rates, the market has just made it crazy to rent something with that makes sense, that you're paying that much money to rent in New York City. If you're looking to stay in Brooklyn for the next 3 to 5 years, then buying is your best investment in yourself and for your future here in New York, because prices will only continue to go up and rents will only continue to go up. So Farah is going to put the rent versus buy matrix by the New York Times in the chat for you. It put in your specific details and numbers, and it will calculate whether it makes financial sense for you to be purchasing right now. If you are in a rent stabilized apartment, or if you're living with roommates or other family members, it might not make sense for you to be purchasing, and that you want to hold this property for the next 5 years. So your dream team is assembled. You've done the rent versus buy matrix, and it says do it. You need to now think about a couple other things. So you've assembled your team. That's the first step. First step, do not go on Street Easy. Do not go to open houses. Assemble your team. First person you call is not me. Everybody else wants to call me first. It's lovely. I like talking on the phone with a roof buddy, but it's your mortgage professional. The person that's going to tell you what your buying power is. Call them first. They're going to say, hey, the banks looked at all of your tax returns and looked at all of your savings accounts and your credit score, and this is how much they're willing to give you a loan for. And then you can go on Street Easy. Do not go on the internet until a bank tells you how much. Then the other people you want me to have are your contractor, an architect, and an inspector. These are people that you might not have, but we do, so that you can make sure that you're buying a property that is sound. And the first thing you're going to do, I'm going to hand it over to Lisa, is, which I already said, don't go on Street Easy, is to get your pre-approval. If you're self-employed, it's important to talk to a mortgage broker before you file your taxes to make sure you're representing your best version of yourself to the bank. It's important to do this first step so you know what properties are going to be available to you. How much are you going to be able to put down? What's your credit score? And what is FHA? I'm going to let Lisa talk about these things, and to make sure you hire New York City experts. We don't use your uncle who's a lawyer or your aunt that's got into mortgage, or places like Quicken or Rocket Mortgage. Quicken and Rocket Mortgage, none of those pre-approvals will hold weight here in New York City. Every broker, real estate broker, is going to ask, that's representing a seller, is going to ask the buyer's broker, get me a real pre-approval letter from a bank that's based here in New York City, that, especially if it's a co-op. So you want somebody that's New York City specific, and deal with a person, not a computer or a robot. So Lisa, go into financing for us.
Absolutely. So like Victoria said, the first thing you want to do is to talk to me or another mortgage professional to get pre-approved. There's a few reasons for this. First of all, you don't want to waste time looking at things that are above the budget of what you're actually going to get pre-approved for, because that's not really fun. You also don't want to, maybe think your budget is X, but in fact, you can go much higher if you want to, right? So what I'm going to do when I talk to you is really talk about your purchase power. And actually, the mortgage process is much more personal and personalized than I think really people think. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Like, I'm going to ask you, are you self-employed? If you're self-employed, that is totally fine. How long have you been self-employed? Typically, you need to be self-employed for at least 2 years. Have you filed your tax returns yet? I'm going to want to look at those. The general rule, if you're self-employed, is what you pay, your taxable income on your returns is what you can use to qualify. So when you're self-employed, you typically take a lot of deductions. Again, that's fine. But we want to look at your tax returns so that we can figure out, what your buying power is now. And then potentially, if you don't find a place before you file your returns next year, we'll have another conversation about it. I'm also going to ask what you're looking at. Are you looking at a co-op, a condo, a multifamily home? Are you going to live in this property? Are you going to live in one unit and rent the other one out? All of that helps me figure out the best product for you. Now, like Victoria said, New York is a totally different kettle of fish in terms of financing and mortgages and properties. One of the things New York has that we are one of the preferred lenders for is a first-time New York State home buyers program. It's a really awesome program. There are income limitations, but if you fit those income limitations, you can actually get down payment assistance of up to 3% of the purchase price. That can be used to help with closing costs or with down payment. There's also FHA. FHA is a federal program that allows you to put as little as 3.5% down. If you're going FHA, you typically are going to be, that's more for single family or multifamily homes. It's not going to work with co-ops. It's not going to work with condos typically. The first time home buyers program can work with condos and it can work with co-ops. There's also your standard 20% down. Or of course you can put more down. So there's a lot of options for us to talk about to figure out the right program for you. Now, of course, everyone is very cognizant about rate right now, right? We are in a high volatile rate environment. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, that means that it's really important to crunch the numbers to make sure you are able to be pre-approved at these higher rates. Second thing I will say is everyone in the mortgage and financial world is cognizant of the fact that these rates are going to come down, probably sometime within the next 12 months. When that happens, you will refinance. So what I always tell people is you marry the property, you date the rate, which means that when rates come down, you will refinance. And actually our company, because we are very cognizant of the fact that everyone is refinancing right now, is offering a lender credit to basically make our cost for the refinance free, which is great. So the last thing I'll just say about this rate environment is while rates are high, it actually makes prices lower. When rates are low, prices go up like they were 2 years ago because everyone was trying to buy. Now we're in a situation where rates are higher, so there's less buyers on the market. So there's actually more deals available for buyers now than there were 2 years ago. Most of the clients I've worked with these last 2 years are people that when the rates were super low, they just couldn't get an accepted offer because of what was going on with rates. So that's another thing to sort of think about in the picture. Someone asked about a link to the first time home buyers program. It's actually best for you to reach out for us to have, because there's quite a few steps to it. So we need to have a conversation to see if you would fit into that program. And then we can talk about all the details. Yeah, but then after I do all that and I crunch the numbers, I give you that pre-approval. Now the pre-approval is really a working draft. So as you start to see more things with Victoria and really fine tune what you're looking for, we will update that pre-approval accordingly. But it basically will allow you to go see things and sort of really figure out what you want to buy and what's able for you to buy in your price limit. One last thing about the pre-approval is that it is a financial snapshot. So it's a financial snapshot based on the information that you've given me in the discussion we've had. So if you change your job, that doesn't mean you can't get a mortgage, but that means we need to have a conversation. If you get a new car, if you take out a new loan, these are all things that will affect your financial picture, which again, doesn't mean you can't do them, but it's something that you want to talk to me about before you do it. And then we just go from there until you find the right property. So I think that's all on my end. And I think Victoria, you can take it from here.
Yep, sounds good. So you Lisa has told you how much your buying power is, which is the first step. You can go to the next slide, Farah. You want to know this so that when we go out and see something, I have had buyers, the first property. We've seen 2 or 3 places that day afterwards, but the first property they looked at, they bought. I know it sounds crazy, but it happens. You want to make sure that if that chance that the property, if by chance, the first property you look at, you fall in love with, you want to put an offer in it, you're in the position to do so. And that's why it's so important you have the pre-approval in your hand. And that's why you want to think about these other questions for yourself. Is timing important to you? Your budget, like people think about budgeting and we're talking about buying power right now, but like really, can you think about what is the max you can afford a month to come out of pocket to cover your overhead? It's not just your mortgage. There's also maintenance. There's taxes sometimes. There's insurance. You have to be calculating the full balloon numbers so that you feel like, oh, I'm not going to be eating rice and beans for the next 5 years. 6 months to a year is the normal rice and beans rate. So what's the timing for you to purchase? Are you ready to purchase today? Have you gotten your finances together and talked to a mortgage broker? Or is this a 5-year plan for you? Do we need to talk about strategies for you for saving for your down payment, which we will send out those resources also. And even if it's 5 years from now, we can start this process today and get ahead of the ball, in which means figuring out how you're saving for your down payment, cleaning up your credit, strategizing on your steps, how to maybe move into a cheaper rental so you're saving there too. There's lots of ways that you could be positioning yourself so that you can, if this is a goal of yours, reach that goal. Family, lifestyle. Do you need to be by a park? Do you need to be by amenities? Do you need to be by a subway? What are the things that are important to you that you need to take into consideration when you're thinking about purchasing? School district, we can't, real estate brokers can't talk to you about school district, but doing your own research, like you need to be in a certain school district because you already have a toddler. A lot of people call me and are like, well, we're going to have a baby, so we need to be in a good school. Like that baby does not exist yet. You do not buy a place for something that does not exist yet. You have the baby, then, and you get the apartment first, then you have the baby. Then once the baby is ready to go to school in like 6 months to a year, then you start worrying about how you get into a good school. Because that you don't want you keep making barriers for entry for yourself that are going to be hard to overcome. Next slide. So a lot of the times I talk about, the strategy. So before I was thinking about strategy, timing, the amenities you want, how you save for your down payment. The other things you want to talk about with yourself and any decision-making partners is, location. Is your job going to change? Is this going to be a commute forever? Does the building have, or the neighborhood you're looking for, have the amenity types? The biggest challenge for most people is they want to be near the park and they want to be in a pre-war building with a doorman, but they don't want to be in a co-op. Those things do not exist. If you want a doorman building close to the park, you're going to be in a co-op. There's no other way around it. If you want to be in, most pre-war buildings are co-ops. There are some conversions, but you need to make sure that your neighborhood matches the property type you're looking for. So if you're looking for new construction, probably also not Park Slope, Gowanus, downtown Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Bushwick. These are the neighborhoods that have had zoning changes and have been able to build new housing. So building typology is important. So thinking about what that looks like for you. I always tell people, and this is something you don't want to hear, is to make their list of 5 deal breakers and then realize you can probably only have 2 or 3 things on that deal breaker list. Just like when you're dating, you're going to have to make a lot of compromises. Well, hopefully with not dating, but with real estate, you're definitely going to have to make compromises. And this is just part of the learning process. Like your money can only go so far here. You can only buy so much. And unless you have an unlimited budget, you're going to have to buy within your means or not buy at all. And that's just a conscious decision you need to make. And then you also not need only to come up with your down payment. You also have to have closing costs. Co-ops are 1 to 3% for closing costs. and 3 to 5% for condos. New construction has another layer of something called transfer taxes that you need to negotiate. And now's a great time to be negotiating for sellers to pick up the transfer taxes. And sellers also have closing costs. So if you're not new construction, sellers have closing costs around 8%. So just think about that when you're looking for your break-even horizon, when you're selling your property, you're going to have to take in 8% interest percent of the property value in closing costs on the sell side. And so do you know where to find these homes? Next slide. Where is everybody searching right now? You can put it in the chat. StreetEasy, Trulia, Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin. Somebody told me Redfin the other day that was the best source of real estate listings. Excuse me. REBNY, the Real Estate Board of New York, has made things more transparent. There are no more listings like walking down and going into the mom and pop store and they only have the listings and nobody else has them. Everybody now has access to the same listings. That's why the job of the real estate broker has changed so much and why having a buyer's broker is so important, because there's no more off-market listings. If you wanted something in a specific building, there are strategies to be like, I want to be on this block or I want to be in this building. There are ways to approach that. But generally, if you're looking for a listing in Park Slope, brokers have to put their listing on the market within 24 hours of signing the exclusive per REBNY rules. REBNY has its own backend database also. So we have all of the REBNY listings in one place where Trulia, StreetEasy, Zillow doesn't have that. And they don't know often clean up all their data. Zillow's notorious for posting co-ops as condos, having listings that are already sold on their platform. Zillow's actually owns StreetEasy. StreetEasy, I think, is the best, most user-friendly and what brokers really still go to here in New York City. But everybody's going to tell you something different. I'd like to just set you up in our backend database and then also let you use StreetEasy. I would not use Redfin. I don't know where that person was getting their information, but that's not the platform that I think is the most reliable and user-friendly. And it has the most reliable tax info too. So we'll set up a database search for you that aggregates all of the REBNY real estate results for you that are on the back end that you will get. Keep in mind that you're looking at listings online. You'll see the seller's agent's info and you want to reach out to them for yourself and think that'll streamline the process. But remember, the seller's agent represents the financial best interest of the seller, not buyers. They don't have your best interest at heart, and you can end up losing money than more money than you save. A buyer's broker represents you, the buyer, and your best interest, and will make sure to ask the right questions and develop a competitive offer strategy for you. So you really want someone that is advocating for you, just like the seller has somebody advocating for them. Sparrow's going to put a little link in the chat for a condo versus co-op personality quiz. If you haven't taken the poll yet, please do so. And the next slide is making an offer and negotiating. Is there any questions I missed in the chat as I'm flying through this? Is there a link for the first-time home buyers program?
Yeah, I already covered that in my part. There's not really. It's better for us to have a conversation first, just because there are a lot of rules to the program that aren't clear from the website. So I don't want you guys going down the hole of the first-time homebuyers program if you're not going to be qualified. So feel free to reach out, and then we can go from there.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. So, like I said, Farah's going to resend that poll link for you. Making an offer and negotiating. The most important thing, like I stressed earlier, is when you walk into the first property you see in open houses, is that you are ready. So you want to be ready to make an offer. That means you have your pre-approval ready, you have your REBNY submit offer form filled out and ready to go, and you have a cover letter based off the example cover letters that I give you to submit. This shows you're serious and your confidence. And there is a psychology to being the first offer. Excuse me. And so that is one of the driving reasons that a lot of buyers win the bid, even if there's higher offers there, because there's sellers feel connected to the first offer that comes in. The market's really competitive right now, despite there being a high interest rates for certain types of properties in certain neighborhoods. It's challenging to always decipher this down to 5 minutes or even 30 seconds while we're talking about these different things, but that if you're looking for something that everybody else is looking for, it is still competitive. If you're looking for something that is highly available and nobody really wants right now, you're in good shape, because the interest rates are driving the people that driving people out of the market. So the things that are less in demand are sitting on the market longer. Your best bet, if you're looking for a deal, is to find something that's been on the market for a while and that you'll have a more leveraged position to negotiate with. One of the main resources that working with a buyer's broker and agent provides is the relationship and knowledge with other agents. Repeat deals together and understanding the seller's agent strategy and temperament can give you a really competitive advantage, specifically in a hot market. The seller's agent wants confidence in a deal, and when they know the other broker, they feel confident. I talk about I've worked here for 20 years, which means I have many agents that I've worked with around here, and it's very helpful in the offer strategy. Negotiation strategy. Work with your agent's grid and devise a strategy. Everything needs to be negotiated before your accepted offer is prepared and submitted to lawyers on the deal sheet. She's going to talk about what the deal sheet is in a second, but your contract terms cannot be different from the deal terms. You might win a bidding war, you offer above asking, but that you then change your mind. You can't do that. Like, once your offer is accepted, unless you have bought yourself some time and renegotiate because everybody's gone away because it's been like 6 weeks, you're not in a position to leverage. So you need to understand, is your offer contingent on financing? Is your offer contingent on inspection? What happens at the inspection? Is this an as-is sale? Some of the terms that I'm negotiating right now that I just thought of are, are you willing to waive your financing contingency? Are you willing to put in a mortgage appraisal contingency? These are the sort of things that you need to understand ahead of time so that you can be confident doing them when you're moving forward. So Farah's going to put a lot of the links in the chat, and I'm going to hand it over to Rashida, who's going to talk about getting into contract.
Thank you. So as Victoria has stated, now you've been pre-approved by your loan officer, your realtor has negotiated your offer, and now your offer has been accepted. This is now when your attorney comes into play. The realtors prepare what we call as a deal sheet. A deal sheet is simply a summary of the accepted terms of your offer. So it will have the buyer's information, the buyer's attorney's information, seller's attorney's information, the seller's information, the property, whether it's a co-op or a condo or a house. It will also have things that were negotiated. So Victoria had mentioned if they negotiated a financing contingency. Most deals that I see right now do have financing contingencies. A financing contingency means that the contract is contingent on you getting a mortgage for a certain amount. If you're not able to get the mortgage, you have a right to cancel the contract and get the return of your deposit. This is very, very important because obviously you're putting down a lot of funds, whether it's 10%, 5%, or 3% of that purchase price. That's funds that you have saved up and you want to make sure that is protected. So those contingencies in your contract are what protects your down payment. So that deal sheet will have that information. Once your attorney gets that deal sheet, your attorney can move forward with what we call as due diligence review. If you are looking at a co-op or a condo, part of that due diligence is reviewing the offering plan, the financials, the board meeting minutes. And the reason you do this, as your attorney does this as the due diligence, is to make sure that even though you physically like the building, that you know what type of property or co-op or condominium association you're buying into, whether there's history of maintenance increases, where there's a common assessment, These things you need to know because once you sign that contract, you're now in a firm contract. Um, Also, prior to you signing the contract, while your attorney is doing their due diligence, you have to do an inspection of the property. I tell clients whether it's a co-op, a condo, or a house, you want to do an inspection because that inspection is very important because it goes to a term in your contract which says as is. And that means you understand the condition. So inspector is they go in, they turn on the appliances, they look to see if there's leaks, they look to for the structure of the property, they check the electrical, the plumbing, things that you may not be familiar with, and that's why you hire an inspection company. Your attorney's not familiar with that because your attorney doesn't look at the property. Your bank doesn't care about the condition, they just care about the value. So that's why in New York you have to do your inspection prior to you signing the contract. It is very important you do that. If something comes up during that inspection period, prior to you signing the contract, things can be negotiated. As Victoria stated, there's a deal sheet, your offer is accepted, but until the contract is signed by both parties, you're not in contract. So if something comes up in the due diligence, say there's a huge assessment that is pending in the next couple of months, or there's litigation going on in the property, or they don't have good financials, or when you do your inspection, it turns out that the electrical needs to be rehauled. These are things that you didn't know when you put in your offer. And these are things that can be incorporated for the seller to fix, or a reduction in the price, or a credit. Your agent and your attorney will speak with you about these things that can happen prior to you signing the contract. So the contract reflects you understand all of these items. And that happens during that inspection and due diligence prior to you getting into contract. Now, getting you into contract, your attorney is going to explain to you the terms of your contract of sale. Main thing in your contract you want to find out, is there a mortgage contingency? Typically, a contract has 30 to 45 days for you to get the mortgage. If during that 30 to 45-day period you're not able to get the mortgage, you have a right to cancel the contract and get the return of your deposit. Lisa or whoever mortgage person you're working with, they're behind the scenes during that 30 to 45 days getting you a firm mortgage commitment. So they're reviewing your tax returns, they're doing their due diligence on the building, your credit report, they're doing the appraisal on the property, which is very important as well. That's part of your mortgage contingency. So something that, when the market was hot, a lot of people were negotiating and waiving their mortgage contingencies, waiving their appraisal contingencies. If that's something that you're doing because this particular property is so hot, have a conversation with your agent, with your attorney on what that means to waive a mortgage contingency, or what that means to waive an appraisal contingency. Right now, most of my contracts have mortgage contingencies. So there's no waiving of mortgage contingencies or waiving of appraisals, because appraisal unfortunately have been coming in a little bit shorter now. So we want to make sure when you get that commitment from your lender, they have done their appraisal, because we want to make sure that's not an issue going down the line, especially if you're buying a house, a co-op, or a condo. Um, Other things that happen getting you into contract is the as is provision, understanding the title to the property. I personally like to look up the property to see if there's violations or open permits prior to you getting into contract, but not all attorneys do that. But because that happens later on when they order a title search on the premises or a lien search on the premises. For a house, that's part of kind of the due diligence that, as I said, I personally like to look up and see if there's violations, because we can negotiate things in the contract of sale. If you're looking at a house and they're telling you you're taking it subject to violations or subject to open permits, you should have a conversation with your attorney what that means, because it can have financial implications to you later on down the line, or it may affect the type of getting you a mortgage, whether the bank will allow you to close with open permits, with open violations. So once again, these conversations you're going to have with your attorney getting you into contract. Once you get into contract, Fire, if you want to go to the next slide. Once you get into contract, there's things that happen behind the scenes. And as I said, there's time periods. The first time period is your mortgage contingency, 30 to 45 days. Closing in New York is typically on or about 60 days, and that goes concurrently with your mortgage time period as well. So it's important that your agent or your mortgage professional knows what deadlines that they have to meet in order for you to get your mortgage commitment. A lot of things at this point is happening with you getting documents to your mortgage person. Your attorney is getting what we call a title search on the premises or a lien search on the premises to make sure that there's no issues on that end. With the co-op, if you're buying a co-op, once you get your mortgage, your attorney is also now going to be working with, and you submit your application to the board. Your attorney has to get certain documents to the co-op attorney or to the management company and also to the bank attorney. So during the in contract period, which is roughly about 60 days for a condo or a house, I would say for a co-op, you're typically looking at about a 90-day process for being in that in contract period. Lisa can probably speak a little bit more about what happens on the mortgage end for the mortgage period of that 30 to 45 days. And then once you get into that, the next period of that 60-day process handles more with your attorney and with your agent if you're looking at a co-op or a condo, because that has applications and things that you have to deal with. So if Lisa, you want to talk about.
Yeah, I'll just jump in on that real quick. So this is the part of the process where having an attorney and a mortgage professional that work together a lot is incredibly in your advantage. Because when Rashida does a lot of her due diligence that she just talked about, because we work together so much, if she sees something that might be a red flag, she's going to reach out to me. Say, hey, I looked at these board minutes and there's this issue. Is that going to be a problem? And 9 times out of 10, I can find a solution to the problem if I know about it as soon as possible. So the faster I know about something that might be an issue with the building or with the co-op or the condo, the faster I can come up with a solution that works, and we could talk about what that is. So that's one of the really important things about sort of the team thing that we've been talking about. So once Rashida does her job and she has these amazing terms for you guys, and you have a fully executed contract that means signed by both buyer and seller, it becomes on our end what's called a live deal, which means we get the appraisal order, we get you initial disclosures to e-sign, and we work to get you into underwriting as soon as possible. And I have to say, this is one of the areas where I feel like me and my team really shine. We just get you through underwriting very quickly. On one hand, we do that because I've gotten a lot of documents from you up front. So I've looked at those documents, I've seen anything else we need, and I'm trying to work to get as complete package as possible for when my amazing processor, Danielle, reviews the file. When Danielle reviews the file, which is after it's in fully executed contract, she's going to review everything and ask you for anything that she thinks the underwriter's going to need. And then we get you into the underwriting review. To give you an idea, our underwriting turn times are typically 24 to 48 hours. A lot of our competitors, their turn times are 2 weeks. So why is that good for you? The faster you get through initial underwriting, A, you know that this deal's moving along without any issues, which is always great. But more importantly, B, you are meeting the mortgage contingency date that is set in your contract so that you have security over your deposit. And C, if you're applying for a co-op, you need to have that mortgage commitment letter before you can get aborted. That's very, very important. A board will not even think about scheduling an interview until they have a complete board package that Victoria will discuss in a minute, which includes your mortgage commitment letter. Some boards say come in tomorrow. Some boards say our next meeting is a month from now. You are really at the behest of the co-op. So the faster you get a commitment letter from your mortgage company, the faster you get to initiate the interview process for the co-op board. God, excuse me, I've had a cough for like 2 weeks.
Everybody knows.
I know. But anyway, so once you have your commitment letter, that is basically your stamp from the bank that says, this looks good. This is what we need to finish off to get you in for clear to close. And it'll say some easy things like 1 year of homeowner's insurance, because when you buy a property, you have to pay your first year of homeowner's insurance prior to closing. And a few other little things, updated documents or some sort of verification of employment or what have you. And then once you have that, then you will work with Rashida and Victoria, and we will let the attorneys know, so that basically we're one step closer to getting the clear to close. Victoria, do you want to talk about co-op?
Yeah, I do. God, no, I don't, but I will. With my raspy voice and this whatever is going on, I have the sniffles now for 48 hours. So once we've gotten into contract, the heavy lifting is really on the lawyers and the mortgage broker. My job is really just keep everybody in check, including you, the buyer, to make sure you're meeting your deadlines. Have you gotten all your paperwork into the bank? Are you checking in with your lawyer to make sure everything's been checked off their list? We're assembling, if you're a co-op, if you're buying a co-op, we're assembling your board package, which is super important. You need to get reference letters. You can't ask for those within 24 hours. You need to start working on this ahead of time. And I have somebody in my office that works, Farah, who's here on this call, who works with you, dedicated to align everything so it's beautiful, easy to read for the other broker, for the sellers, and for the board and management company, because everybody's going to be looking at this paperwork to make sure that you qualify to live in this building. Sometimes the board interview is, just a formality, and sometimes they really go through and, make sure that you're essentially a business partner to them. They are relying on you to help pay the bills, keep the lights on, make sure that everybody that they pay is paid, and that you're going to be a good neighbor and a good business partner for them, because you're making an investment in the shares of this property. You're not buying real property with co-ops. So you want to make sure that you're prepped and ready to go for the interview. Like I said, sometimes it's just, a formality. And sometimes, like, this prepping my clients this weekend, I was like, that's a trick question. The trick question is like, where did I tell them the trick question was? If you want to be on the board, that's always a trick question. It's like, you need to delicately say, I do, but I don't. Like, I like what you're doing. You're doing a great job, so there's no criticism. And that if you needed me to, I'll also be a great, willing neighbor, happy to help where I can step in. So it's like a delicate balance of saying, like, yeah, you're doing great. I don't want to take over what you're doing, but also, yes, if you need me to, I will do it, so that, like, they know that, like, if they can rely on you. So it's always like, you have to finagle how you say that. But to me, it's a trick question, because they're looking to see if you want to come in and change things, and take over, or, it's always complicated on how you want to answer that very democratically and be wary of the words you use. So we always talk that through, and that's the trick question I always think is coming for them. But some people don't even ask anything that I prep them for. So, and sometimes they're like, oh my God, they went through line by line our board package and grilled us on every cent we paid. Depends on which kind of board you want to live in. You want to know these things before you buy into the building, because if you don't want to live by the person that goes line by line, then maybe this isn't the right building for you. So I think everybody went over the Aztec agreements, the title search, underwriting, all of that. Lisa, or did you guys skip that?
Yeah, well, I hadn't gone through. We were just talking about the board application. So now that Victoria's gone over the process of getting you the board application together, some things, there's a bank attorney that's assigned to the file. If you're buying a co-op, they'll send you over some documents that have to go into that application. Your attorney will also be in touch with the bank attorney to make sure those items get out to you, and your mortgage person will also be in touch with you to make sure that you get those documents from the bank attorney. So once the bank has done their due diligence, the bank has issued that firm commitment letter. If you're buying a co-op, your application is submitted. If you are buying a condo, condos also have waiver application these days for a lot of the condos, and those look similar to a co-op application, but you don't have to go through an interview with the condominium. It's more about just submitting the paperwork for that application. If you're looking at a house, there's no application, obviously. It's just really your bank doing their due diligence and getting you that mortgage commitment. Once that commitment is issued, bank clearance is the next step. that is issued. And that can take, depending on the conditions in that commitment, a couple of days, a few weeks, depending on that commitment, which your attorney needs to review to make sure that your commitment meets the terms of the contract. And it said, so the next step, so that time period of 60 days, 30 to 45 days for you to get your mortgage really um, moves pretty quickly. And your closing time period of on or about 60 days also moves pretty quickly. And in New York, that time period really isn't set in stone because we have these moving parts. Once you get that clearance to close, the next step that happens is you're scheduling the closing because now you've been approved by the bank. You've got the bank clearance to close. If it's a co-op, you've been approved by the co-op, so they send out that approval letter. Now the attorneys can schedule the closing. Farah, if you want to go to the next slide, we can talk about closing. One thing I tell clients, the closing does not happen automatically. If you're looking at a co-op, you're approved. It does not happen the next day. Same thing for a house or a condo. Once you get that bank clearance, the closing doesn't happen immediately the next day. There's disclosures that have to go out. There's documents that actually physically, closings are done in person with wet signatures. So there's documents that have to happen that takes your attorney is going to be the one to coordinate. At minimum, you're looking at 5 business days from when you get that co-op approval. Typically for co-ops, they even tell you 2 weeks before they'll even give you a closing date. For a house or a condo, it can happen a little bit quicker. So I would say at minimum 5 business days, so roughly about a week before you schedule your closing. And your attorney is the one that will be coordinated with your bank, with your agent, with the other sides. I call it a juggling act because you have to get all these parties available on a certain date at a certain time in order to have a closing date happen. Prior to your closing, your attorney will let you know, speak with you whether you're available. Also, you have to do a final walkthrough to make sure that everything that when you saw the property 60 days ago or 90 days ago is still in the same condition, that the seller has moved out, the property is delivered vacant and broom clean. And this also comes into play why that inspection was good, was so important, because this is the time when you go again and you're checking all the appliances, make sure they're still working. You're looking to make sure that there's nothing leaking. You're making sure that nothing has really changed other than the seller moving out of their belongings and not causing any damage to the property, whether it's a house, a co-op, or a condo. And if you missed something in your inspection or you didn't do an inspection and now you do your walkthrough and they were like, wait, that window is broken, but you didn't do an inspection, that falls under the as is condition. If the seller says, well, that window was broken at the beginning, it was always broken. That's why you want to make sure you do that inspection, because that walkthrough is your final chance to just look at the property before you get to the closing. And your agent will be there with you. Your realtor will be there at the walkthrough. Your attorney's not there with you. Your attorney's there with you at the closing. The bank attorney also attends the closing. Closes are typically an hour and a half to 2 hours of you signing a lot of your bank documents and co-op documents or condo documents or the deed and transfer tax documents at the closing, as well as bringing your funds. Funds are typically bank checks that you have to bring. There's some personal checks, so you'll have a conversation with your attorney on what checks you need to bring for the closing to make sure that you're prepared and ready for that closing. Victoria, if you want to talk a little bit about the walkthrough, that's fine as well.
The easy part. You leave me with the easy part. The easy part. Yeah, the heavy lifting really after we get into contract on my end is really just the board package. Everything else is then in the mortgage professional and lawyer's court. The next time after we get through the board interview and you pass the board is the Lisa's going to have to jump off at 6:10. So we're going to run to her questions. Is the inspection, I'm sorry, the final walkthrough. And that's just to make sure that the property is being delivered in the condition we expect. So if we expect the windows to be repaired because they came up the inspection, like today, the property that I'm negotiating to go into contract right now is there's 3 windows that are broken. One of the radiators needs to be capped and the HVAC system in the back is not pumping the right temperature of the split, sorry, not HVAC split units. So they need to be all addressed. And so we outline those and ask for those from the sellers. And we're going back and forth about what repairs they will make and expect, and sometimes they won't. And you just say, okay, we'll have to get the windows repaired or else we're not buying it. Like, are you going to lose the property over, a couple $100 worth of work just because you don't want to do it? But you need to have confidence in yourself that this is like what you're up for the challenge, because you know what, there's going to be things that break. It's home ownership. Like, things break all the time, even when you're buying new construction. I bought a brand new house and started doing work pretty much right off the bat, to fix the mistakes of other people. Just, and one word of advice: do it right the first time. Everybody makes short-term solutions, long-term things, and really just do it right the first time. Then you won't run into a lot of these problems. So then you're at the closing table. Rashid, you need to say anything else, or we're going to let anybody ask Lisa any questions before we wrap
I think
up?
we can go into questions because I talked about the closing being about an hour and a half of you signing the documents. You get the keys at the closing, so you're able to move in right after the closing, pending coordinating if you're looking at a co-op or a condo with the management company. But for a house, you get it. You move into your house right away. You get your keys. You give over the funds to the seller.
Do not schedule
And
your move within 24 hours of the closing.
yes, definitely have a conversation with your attorney, and before you schedule your move and scheduling the closing, making any major decisions. That's probably one of my major things with buyers is do not, decide to move. Don't Your closing date is not set in stone, so don't make any decisions around that closing date until you have a conversation with your attorney on the actual scheduled closing date.
And your mortgage professional. This is like a
Yes.
me and Rashida thing. Like, we need to all be in the loop. And if you're like, hey, I have the movers coming next week, I'm like, I'm sorry, that's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z. So it's really, really important to sort of, we are your team. We're in discussion this entire time. And then we're all there for you at closing. But like, you need to keep us in the loop, and you also need to take our advice about things like movers, etc. So I have to jump off in about 5 minutes. So I don't think there's any more specific questions for me. Like Rashida said, a brownstone is considered a house. Um, and
Camilla's question about the planning for Bed-Stuy. But is there any like finance questions that you have for Lisa? Anybody have any specific questions about financing, what banks look at, how to get your pre-approval, what's the difference between pre-approval, pre-qual?
Yeah,
Those are sort
I
of
have a question actually.
go ahead.
sure.
My realtor's been talking to me about a rate buy down right now, which is
Mhm.
so significant since the interest rate is so goddamn high. But
Yep.
I do not really understand the rate buy down. Can you explain that one?
Sure. So, what a buy down basically means is there's a few ways of doing it. So, one straightforward way of doing it is, so first I'll tell you, and Amanda, I don't know if you're already in contract or not, but it's a little premature to have these kind of discussions before you sort of find a property, simply because I'm going to talk to you about the numbers based on rates now. And that means rates this moment in the market. And that might not be the same numbers a week from now, 2 weeks from now, etc. But in terms of the buy down, yes, you have a few options. So one option for a buy down is to actually literally yourself buy down the rate, where basically your closing costs go up. It's called points because you add on to your closing costs to literally buy down the rate. So if the rate is supposed to be, and I'm just totally making up a number, 7.5, you add on to your closing costs to buy down the rate to 7.25, for example. The second way of doing a buy down is where actually you build into the loan into the closing costs a buy down that then is negotiated as a lender's credit. So there's a way to do that. It's a little complicated, but there is a way to do that. But in both of those situations, with both the points and the buy down, because of the cost that you're taking on, that would be a situation where you're going to keep that rate for over 5 years. If you're going to do what I feel like most buyers are doing right now, which is take the rate for about a year to a year and a half and then refinance, you probably don't want to do the buy down option, simply because in both of the options I explained, it's higher closing costs for you. So to pay, for example, $2,000 to buy down the rate to, whatever percentage, when in fact you're going to refinance in probably 12 months, and the savings in 12 months, the savings to refinance are going to be more than $2,000. It's like you're paying $2,000 just to have a lower rate for 12 months, if that makes sense. I'm happy, Amanda, if you want to schedule an appointment with me, we can talk about it more, because it is very sort of complicated. But yes, there are buy down options. The question is, depending on where you are in the process and what your purchase price is, if it makes sense.
And just to kind of help just a little bit, because I also, when I meet with clients, I go over their closing costs and estimate of it.
Yep.
So I explain to clients, part of your closing costs are your bank fees. So a bank fee, one of the things may be, they say, is a point. A point may be a percentage of your mortgage. And the reason you have that point is because you're paying to lower your interest rate, which is what they would say in essence is a buy down of your rate. So you want to say, okay, I allocated, Victoria had mentioned that your closing costs may be for a co-op, maybe 2 or 3%, for a condo or a house, and maybe 4%. But now you actually have it on top of that because you rather have a lower rate. You're going to have an extra cost associated with that, another $2,000 in bank fees, because you're telling the bank, charge me this $2,000 to bring my lower interest rate down. I think that may make a little bit more sense as well.
Yeah. You guys
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Amanda.
Any other questions for me before I jump off?
We sent your info in there, and if anybody has any other
Yeah,
questions,
cool.
reach out.
So I'll jump off, guys. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye, Lisa. So just to go over a couple things, after this class, you get a recording of the class, you get our Buying into Brooklyn workshop, Brooklyn ebook. You'll have, if you decide to work with us, you get access to Basecamp, which is our project manager tool that gives you step-by-step guidance each step of the way of the process. So while we're prepping you for looking at in real life, prepping you for when you're looking what questions to ask, how to interview, the professionals you're looking to hire. All of these things are laid out for you in Basecamp at each step of the way. What things to negotiate for in your inspection, what things to let slide. So that's one of the biggest tools I think that is really important for people. You'll have access to Realty MX, and you can schedule a call with any of us after this to follow up, and no matter where you are in the process, if you have questions, and if you haven't hired a lawyer yet, or a mortgage professional, or a buyer's broker, we're all available to work with you together. And Amanda, I wish you best of luck with all of that, but happy to answer any other questions you might have. Hopefully, if your broker can't answer the question, or offering you things that then they can't explain to you, that would be, you want someone that can talk to you about the things, especially if they're offering them to you. And hopefully you're working with a mortgage professional that is explaining things to you in more in depth. Any more questions? Camilla, you had Camilla?
I think she had that question about if you want to
Bed-Stuy.
move into a neighborhood that has more long-term retail and new construction development, where can you research the planning and zoning for the neighborhood and growth goals?
Right.
There is a website for the city that talks about zoning. I don't have it offhand.
I can tell you, I can answer
Yeah.
this very well, Rashida. So there's no comprehensive plan for New York City. The borough president's office this week put out a 201-page plan for Brooklyn that gives goals. It's not a comprehensive plan. It's from their perspective on comprehensive for Brooklyn, not for Bed-Stuy. Bed-Stuy has not been rezoned. There are neighborhoods that have had rezonings done, like East New York recently, and you can understand what the changes will be in those neighborhoods. But Bed-Stuy, the majority of it is 1 to 4 family houses. There are thoroughfares like on Fulton, Nostrand, blocks like that have a commercial overlay. So they have slightly more height, or something called FAR, which is floor area ratio, than the inner blocks that only have, you times the length and width of the dimensions of the building to get your FAR. So if you're your buildings, lots are usually 20 by 100, and you can put a 20 by 50 building on a building that's 20 by 100 with 4 stories, because of the FAR. So calculating what the density is will give you an understanding of what the capacity is. And most NAPE blocks do not have a commercial overlay. It's just the commercial thoroughfares that are like that's Fulton, Atlantic, Nostrand, things like that, that help you understand what the long-term tenants are. But it's going to be hard for you to, those neighborhoods are established and have cultural and historic significance. They're not getting rezoned where they're going to be taking blocks of the neighborhood out and changing those dynamics like they did, sadly, to the Gowanus. Let me see if you.
And I would just put a plug because community boards are also very good. If you're interested, find out the community board for that area that you're looking at, and they normally have a real estate committee, or they may have like a land use committee. You can always speak to them, just as an FYI. And you can easily just look up the community boards from the borough halls. They have them listed. Brooklyn Borough Hall should have a list of all of the community boards and their information as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Somebody, I think, Amanda, you asked about, no, mortgage brokers don't usually have specific neighborhoods. You do have areas of expertise. Like New York City has specific mortgage professionals that are New York City experts. You definitely want, like, I always say for mortgage professionals, you don't want to go with somebody that like works in specifically in North, like Wells Fargo and the mortgage brokers in North Carolina. And they're like, yeah, I can do mortgages in New York. Doesn't fly. You need somebody, especially if you're looking in co-ops and condos in New York City, somebody that's doing this on a daily basis. And this is their language. Like if you would talk about what their love languages is, like New York City real estate co-ops and condos is their love language. So don't pick people that they're not talking about the thing that you're buying on a daily basis as their expertise. That's just it. So when you're picking a mortgage professional, you want somebody that's working in the New York City market. They're doing deals in, okay, yes, maybe they're doing deals in Staten Island, but like New York City, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, like those are the places, because co-ops is a big part of the picture here for you. And when do we expect rates to come down? That would have been a good question for Lisa. Everybody was talking about this round that interest rates were going to come down, and unexpectedly they didn't. And a lot of my buyers are now in contract and frustrated that things have not evened out more for them. But they're working with Lisa and other mortgage professionals that have products that let you refi in the future, or taking shorter loans. You don't need to do a 30-year loan. Like, I know it feels like that's what we're supposed to do these days, but you're probably not going to live in your home for 30 years. You should be considering a 5 or 7 or a 15-year ARM where interest rates are slightly lower right now. And then thinking about refinancing if you are in there when you're still there. So I hope that answers your question. Amanda, did you have other question? You're welcome. Who knows? I just want people to realize, though, that like interest rates are never going to go back down to this 3% blip that we saw on our radar during COVID and below. Like that is just like, 3 and change, maybe. I got 3 and change before COVID on a property, but like these twos, historically low. Never in our lifetime, probably again, unless we horribly live through another crisis of that much. So don't expect that. Like when I bought my house, like Tina in my office always brags she paid 8.7, where she bought her house, interest rates were 8.75%, and her parents paid like 20%. When I bought my house, I paid 5.5%, and now I refied it or got it down like 10 years ago to 4.25%, and I couldn't get it down during the COVID, to 2 and 3%ers, because it just, the numbers just didn't make sense for me, because sometimes they don't, with the closing costs and everything that comes along with it. So just really understanding the closing costs to refi. So that's when Lisa's talking about this product that they have, that there aren't closing costs on their end for the refi. Is interesting to look into that product. Have you ever done an owner financing? I'll let Rashida talk to you about owner financing.
Yeah, we've had clients that do owner financing, very rarely, because typically a seller needs their funds to either pay off their mortgage, or they're moving and they're looking to buy something else. Basically, owner financing is that, let's say the price is 600,000 and the bank and the owner is going to give you a mortgage. Instead of treating you going through a regular lender, they're going to give you a mortgage for 300,000. You're going to sign a note and a mortgage just with that owner, and you have to come up. That owner has to give an interest rate and a time period to pay it off. So, I've done this, or I've been practicing for 20 years. We've done them, but very rarely. And it's typically for a short period of time, maybe a year or two. And most times when you see owner financing, it's sometimes with family members. But as I said, it's doable, but it's something that the owner is really, make sure that they have enough funds to pay off their mortgage on the property, their closing costs, if they're not getting all of the funds up front, because really they're just giving you a mortgage on the property and you're spreading that over a couple of years, or months, depending on the type of terms that you deal with.
So one of my clients sent me listings on Instagram. My client's like, let's go see this one. I'm like, I cannot wait. But it's not, I don't think he's serious. It's like in the middle of nowhere. Other questions, guys, about owner financing? I hope that answered your question. Always people ask, and Rashida can probably answer this too, about buying with friends. Everybody always wants to be like, can I buy with my two friends from college? Like, we all want to buy a house. We're never going to get there. Like, it's, it is challenging.
Yeah.
And I think, but it has been done, but I think it's far-fetched also from the
it's definitely it's definitely possible. Main thing first, well, first of all, you guys want to speak with the mortgage person to see if that's going to be a structure that's going to be available. Who's going to be getting the mortgage in their name? Is it going to be in all four of the, or all of the friends are going to be on the mortgage? If it's just going to be certain friends that are going to be on the deed and certain friends are going to be on the mortgage, what does that look like? So you want to make sure that one, mortgage person is able to work with that type of arrangement. Secondly, most importantly as well, is to make sure that you have an agreement between the friends on the type of ownership percentage and things like that. It's called a joint owner agreement. Even if you're not buying with a friend or you're buying with a fiance or a partner and you're not married and you want to go into, I just had a client, they close and they're not married, and we put together a joint owner agreement, because what happens if they split up or they break up or they, so things like that. But it is possible to buy properties with friends as a whole, but you definitely want to make sure that you have agreements in play, joint owner agreement, and then also make sure about the qualifying. If you're getting financing, make sure you speak with a professional, to make sure that you guys are qualified to purchase the property. For a co-op, you're probably not going to see something like that. You're probably looking at more of a house where you're looking at friends that are coming together to purchase something, whether it's a one family, a two family, or a multifamily. Maybe a condo if it's more of an investment, but I would say most times when you're seeing friends coming together, it's probably looking at more of like a residential house. Definitely not for a co-op.
Yeah, I think that you should have these agreements too if you're buying with a partner that you're not married to, also, because sometimes one of the persons is putting more equity in than the other, or and vice versa, or paying more on the monthly expenses. So just I'm having these things in writing so that if you have, I always talk, or I did a class like this because of buying after a breakup, and having an exit strategy is always you don't want to be thinking about things going wrongly, but making sure that you're protected in case they do is never a bad plan. Just like planning for heavy rain and all the other things that we've been dealing with lately. Other questions, or else I'm going to leave it so that you guys can reach out to us directly if you have follow-up calls or questions you want to have and have one-on-one conversations. Sometimes this stuff is personal and people don't want to ask in public. And like I said, if you decide to work with us, there's all these resources. There's going to be some bunch of follow-up material. Look for it. Happy to provide all these resources, even if we're not working together, because I want you to be educated and feel like you're empowered through this process. It is a lot. And so everything that can help you get through it without pulling or losing all your own hairs is in your benefit. So happy to do that for you. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and share with whoever you need to help you with this process.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye, guys. Have a great night.